The sky over New York City turned silver at exactly 11:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his office at the Pentagon when every communication device in the building started screaming at once. Phones rang, computers beeped, and emergency alarms filled the air with their sharp sounds. Jake dropped his coffee mug and ran to the window. Above the city, massive ships hung in the air like metal clouds. They were bigger than city blocks, smooth and shining in the sunlight. More ships appeared over Washington, D.C., then London, then Tokyo. Within minutes, every major city on Earth had silver giants floating above them. Lisa Wright was in her lab studying samples from Mars when her assistant burst through the door. The young man could barely speak, just pointed at the television screen showing the ships. Lisa had spent her whole career hoping to meet alien life.
Now that it was happening.
She felt more scared than excited. At the Pentagon, Admiral Paul Carter gathered his staff in the main briefing room. The room filled with military officers, scientists, and government officials. Everyone talked at once until Carter banged his hand on the table. "Quiet," he shouted. "We need to figure out what we're dealing with here." The answer came 30 minutes later. Every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth received the same message at the same time. The voice was calm and spoke perfect English, though it sounded strange, like it came from underwater. "People of Earth," the voice said, "we are the Zephyrian Collective. We come in peace with good news for your species." Hey. Jake Morrison stood with the other officials watching the main screen in the Pentagon briefing room. The voice continued speaking. "Your world has been chosen for protection under the Galactic Preservation Protocol. This is a great honor. Throughout the galaxy, we have identified promising species like yours and saved them from the dangers of space." Lisa Wright felt her heart racing. This was everything she had dreamed of, but something felt wrong. The aliens talked like they had already made all the decisions. "We will begin moving your people to safe areas within the next few days," the voice explained. "Our ships will establish defensive positions around your planet. You will be protected from all threats that exist in the galaxy." Paul Carter looked around the room at the other military leaders. Their faces showed the same thought he was having. The aliens were not asking permission. They were telling Earth what would happen. "This process has been used to save over 300 civilizations," the voice went on. "Each protected world has grown into a peaceful and happy society. Your species shows great promise in art, science, and creative thinking. We will help you develop these gifts safely." The message ended, and the room fell silent. Outside, the silver ships remained perfectly still in the sky. They made no sound, created no wind, and cast no shadows despite their enormous size. Rachel Stone, a Marine colonel who had fought in 3 wars, spoke first. "Did they just tell us they're taking over our planet for our own good? That's what it sounded like," Jake replied. He had dealt with many difficult situations in his military career, but nothing like this. Within hours, world leaders connected through secure video calls. The president, prime ministers, and other officials from every major nation appeared on screens around the Pentagon briefing room. Everyone had the same questions, but nobody had answers. Then something new happened. A smaller ship, about the size of a football field, descended from the largest vessel over Washington, D.C. It landed gently in a field outside the city. A message came through all communication systems again. "We will now begin formal talks with your leaders. Please send representatives to the landing site. We look forward to meeting you in person." Jake Morrison found himself chosen as one of the human representatives. Along with Lisa Wright, Paul Carter, Rachel Stone, and a few others, he climbed into a military helicopter and flew to the landing site. The alien ship looked even stranger up close. Its surface was perfectly smooth, like liquid metal that had been frozen in place. No windows, doors, or markings could be seen anywhere on it. Then, without any sound, a section of the ship simply melted away, creating an opening. A figure walked out of the ship, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. The alien looked almost human, but was much taller, maybe 8 feet high. Its skin seemed to be made of crystal, and light moved through it in slow patterns. It wore no clothing but had what looked like metal devices attached to various parts of its body. "Greetings," the creature said, its voice the same one they had heard on the broadcasts. "I am Veltar, ambassador of the Zephyrian Collective. I am pleased to meet the representatives of Earth." Lisa Wright stepped forward, her scientific training overcoming her fear. "We're honored to meet you, Ambassador Veltar. I'm Dr. Lisa Wright. These are my colleagues from Earth's government and military." Veltar's crystal skin flickered with different colors, which might have been some kind of emotional expression. "Your species is remarkable. In our observations, we have seen your rapid advancement in technology and your unique approach to solving problems." Paul Carter could not stay quiet any longer. "Ambassador, we appreciate your interest in our planet, but we need to understand exactly what you're planning to do." "Of course," Veltar replied. "The Galactic Preservation Protocol is quite simple. We have learned that species at your level of development face many dangers: war with aggressive neighbors, natural disasters, resource depletion, and other threats that can destroy entire civilizations." The ambassador gestured toward the sky, where the massive ships still hung motionless. "Our technology can protect you from all these dangers. We will establish defensive systems around your planet and relocate your population to areas we can better defend." "Relocate our population?" Rachel Stone asked. "You mean move us away from our cities and homes?" "Only to keep you safe," Veltar explained. "The safe zones will have everything your people need, better than what you have now. Actually, clean energy, perfect weather control, advanced medical facilities. Your people will live longer, healthier lives." Jake Morrison felt a growing uneasiness in his stomach. "What happens to the places where we live now?" "They will become part of the defensive network," Veltar said. "Some of your cities are in locations that are difficult to defend. The safe zones are chosen for maximum protection." Lisa Wright asked the question that was bothering all of them. "Have other species been happy with this arrangement?" Veltar's skin flashed bright colors that seemed pleased. "Oh yes, very happy. Once species understand the benefits of protection, they are grateful. The dangerous period of independence ends, and the peaceful period of growth begins." "Dangerous period of independence?" Paul Carter repeated. "Yes," Veltar said. "The time when species try to expand into space on their own, fight their own battles, make their own mistakes. Very risky. It's much better to skip that phase and move directly to peaceful development." The human representatives looked at each other. Something about this conversation felt very wrong, but the aliens seemed genuinely friendly and helpful. Then, Rachel Stone asked the question that would change everything. "Ambassador Veltar," she said slowly, "I appreciate everything you've told us about your protection and how it will help us. But I have one question." "Of course, Colonel Stone. What is your question?" Rachel looked directly at the crystal being, towering over them. "Why do you assume we want your protection?" The ambassador's skin went completely dark for a moment. The translation device he wore made strange clicking sounds. He seemed to be trying to process something his mind could not understand. "I do not understand the question," Veltar finally said. "It's simple," Rachel continued. "You've told us all about how you're going to protect us. But nobody asked us if we wanted to be protected. Why do you assume that we do?" Veltar stood, motionless for nearly a full minute. His skin flickered through colors none of them had seen before. Finally he spoke again, but his voice sounded different, uncertain. "In 10,000 years of implementing the preservation protocol, no species has ever asked that question?" 3 days after Rachel Stone asked her question, the world had not stopped talking about it. Every news channel, every internet forum, and every coffee shop conversation centered on the same idea. Did humans have the right to say no to help, even if that help might save their lives? Henry Collins sat in his office at Harvard University, surrounded by books and papers. As one of Earth's most respected philosophers, he had been asked to lead a special group of thinkers from around the world. Their job was to help humanity figure out what to do about the alien offer. The phone rang constantly. Reporters wanted interviews, government officials wanted advice, and ordinary people wanted someone to explain what was happening. Bateson Henry had studied human nature for 40 years, but he had never seen anything like this global debate. Meanwhile, more alien ships had arrived. The Zephyrian Council itself was coming to Earth for direct talks. Veltar had explained that the humans' question was so unusual that the highest leaders of the collective needed to address it personally. Sarah. Mitchell stood on the deck of the aircraft carrier Enterprise, watching the massive alien vessel descend from the clouds. As Fleet Admiral, she would lead Earth's negotiation team. Next to her stood Peter Hayes, a language expert who had spent the last 3 days learning everything possible about Zephyrian communication patterns. The new alien ship was different from the others. Instead of smooth silver, it was covered in what looked like growing crystal formations. Beautiful colors moved through the crystal like slow lightning. When it landed on the water next to the carrier, it floated perfectly without disturbing the ocean surface. Kate Sullivan checked her tablet for the 100th time. As a strategic analyst, she had studied every piece of information the aliens had shared about their protection program. The more she learned, the more questions she had. A doorway opened in the side of the crystal ship, and 5 aliens walked across the water as if it were solid ground. They moved with perfect coordination, their crystal skin flickering in patterns that seemed like a conversation humans could not hear. The lead alien was taller than Veltar and wore more complex metal devices on its body. When it spoke, its voice was deeper and carried more authority. "I am Council Leader Vex Falum of the Zephyrian Collective. We have come to resolve the confusion about our protection offer." Sarah Mitchell stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth, Council Leader." "I'm Admiral Mitchell. We're grateful that you came to speak with us personally. This situation is unprecedented," Vex Falum said. "Never in our history has a species questioned the preservation protocol. We wish to understand what has caused this unusual response." Daniel Brooks, Earth's top negotiator, had prepared for this moment. "Council Leader, we appreciate everything you've told us about your protection program. But before we can make a decision, we need to understand more about what happens to species that choose differently." Dexfall's skin pattern shifted to what seemed like confusion. Choose differently. There is no different choice. Species either receive protection or they face destruction. "But what about species that refuse protection and still survive?" Kate Sullivan asked. The aliens exchanged those flickering light patterns again. Dex Falum seemed to be consulting with the others before answering. "That does not happen," he said finally. "Species at your level of development cannot survive the dangers of the galaxy without protection. This is a proven fact." Peter Hayes leaned forward. "Can you show us records of species that refuse protection?" Another long pause with light patterns. "There are some records, but they are not relevant to this discussion. Those species chose unwisely and paid the price." "What price?" Sarah Mitchell asked. Vix Valum gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the air between them. It showed a planet covered in cities, with millions of beings living and working together. Then the image changed, showing the same planet dark and empty. "The Kethran civilization," Dexalum explained, "achieved space travel approximately 4,000 years ago. We offered protection. They refused. Within 3 centuries, they had destroyed themselves in wars with aggressive neighbors." More images appeared, planet after planet, all showing the same pattern. Civilizations that reached a certain level of technology refused protection and then vanished within a few hundred years. "This is why the preservation protocol exists," the Exvelum continued. "Without protection, species like yours face certain destruction." Alex Turner, the security chief, studied the holographic records carefully. Something bothered him about the images, but he could not quite identify what it was. Henry Collins, who had joined the negotiation team by video link, asked a new question. "Council Leader, can you show us records of species that accepted protection?" This foul skin brightened, clearly pleased by this request. New holograms appeared, showing beautiful worlds with clean cities, peaceful populations, and amazing technology. "The Velthic Dominion," Dex Valum said proudly, "accepted protection 6,000 years ago. Look at their achievements in art and philosophy." The images were impressive. Beings that looked like tall, graceful plants created sculptures that seemed to grow rather than being built. Their cities were gardens where technology and nature blended perfectly. "The Zordon Republic," Dexalum continued, showing another world. Protected for 8,000 years. They have eliminated disease, war, and suffering. Daniel Brooks watched the peaceful alien civilizations and felt something nagging at the back of his mind. Council leader, these protected civilizations are remarkable. How far have they expanded into space? Expanded? Ex-Valoom seemed puzzled. They have no need to expand. Everything they require is provided within their protected systems. But surely some of them have built ships to explore other worlds. The alien leader's skin patterns showed what might have been surprise. Why would they do that? Exploration beyond protected space is dangerous. Handle all necessary contact with other systems. Kate Sullivan felt her suspicions growing stronger. What about their technology? Have they developed new inventions since accepting protection? They have perfected their existing capabilities, Dex Valoom replied. They create better art, more comfortable living spaces, more efficient food production.
Oh.
All improvements focus on quality of life. Alex Turner finally realized what was bothering him about the holographic records. Council leader, in all these images of protected civilizations, I don't see any spaceships, research laboratories, or military installations. Don't they maintain any of their own defenses? They have no need for such things, Dex Valoom said. We provide all necessary protection and research. Protected species focus on peaceful development. The human negotiators looked at each other. With growing understanding, Peter Hayes asked the question they were all thinking. Council leader, once a species accepts protection, do they ever develop beyond the level they were at when protection began? Another long pause with light patterns among the aliens. Vixval's answer was careful. Protected species develop in ways that are safe and beneficial. They become more peaceful, more artistic, more contemplative. This is the natural result of removing the stresses of survival. Sarah Mitchell felt a chill run down her spine. But they don't develop new technology, explore new worlds, or face new challenges? Such activities are unnecessary and dangerous, Dex Valoom replied. Protected species achieve perfect contentment within safe boundaries. Henry Collins spoke. From the video screen, Council leader, what you're describing sounds less like protection and more like permanent childhood. Dexvel's skin went dark for a moment. I do not understand that comparison. When human children are young, we protect them from dangers, Henry explained. But as they grow, we gradually let them face challenges on their own. Eventually, they become independent adults who can protect themselves and others.
Oh.
That process is inefficient and risky, Valoom said. Many individuals are harmed during the transition to independence. Our method eliminates that risk.
Daniel?
Brooks stood up straighter. But it also eliminates the possibility of growth. The aliens exchanged rapid light patterns that seemed almost frantic. Dexval's response carried a tone they had not heard before, and growth beyond a certain point leads to expansion, competition, and conflict. The galaxy has seen enough war. Protection creates peace. For whom? Rachel Stone had arrived during the conversation and heard the last exchange. Peace for the protected species, or peace for those doing the protecting? Dex Valoom turned toward her, his skin showing colors that looked almost angry. Colonel Stone, you asked the question that created this confusion. What did you mean by asking why we assume you want protection? Rachel looked directly at the towering alien leader. Meant exactly what I said. You came here and told us what you were going to do for our own good. You never asked what we wanted. You never considered that we might prefer to take our chances on our own. But that is irrational, Dex Valoom replied.
How? Why would any species
choose danger over safety? Because, Rachel said slowly, safety without choice isn't really safety. It's just a comfortable prison. The alien council leader stood motionless for nearly 2 minutes. His skin cycled through colors none of the humans had seen before. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before. Maria Santos had not slept in 3 days. The alien database was the largest collection of information any human had ever seen, and she was one of only 5 people on Earth who had been given access to it. As a specialist in studying different cultures, she had spent her career learning about human societies. Now she was learning about alien ones. What she found made her sick to her stomach. Maria, sat in her small office at the University of California, surrounded by computer screens showing charts, graphs, and alien text that her translation software was still trying to understand. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Every single protected civilization showed the same changes over time. In the first generation, after protection began, the alien species would continue developing new ideas and technologies, but at a slower pace. In the second generation, innovation dropped to half of what it had been before protection. By the third generation, protected species created almost nothing new at all. They became perfect, peaceful, and completely static. Maria picked up her secure phone and called the Pentagon. Within an hour, her findings were being discussed in emergency meetings around the world. At the same time, something unprecedented was happening within the Zephyrian collective itself. For the first time in their recorded history, the council was split on how to handle a situation. Commander Thexvolum stood in the main chamber of the collective's flagship, arguing with other council members through holographic projections. Chamber was a massive crystal sphere that allowed the aliens to communicate using light patterns as well as words. The humans represent a clear threat to the stability of our protection system, Stavum said, his skin flashing angry red patterns. If other species learn that it is possible to refuse protection and survive, our entire civilization will face chaos. A different council member, Zephyr, displayed calmer blue patterns. As the collective's chief expert on alien psychology, she had been studying human behavior since their first contact. Commander Thexvolum, I believe you are missing something important about these humans, Zephyr said. They are not refusing protection because they are aggressive or foolish. They are refusing it because their minds work differently than any species we have encountered. Different how? Asked another council member. Zephyr activated a display showing human brain scans and psychological profiles. Most species we encounter have evolved to seek safety and avoid risk once they reach a certain level of development. Humans are unique. Their evolution occurred on a planet with constant environmental changes, predators, and challenges. The display showed images of Earth's history, from ice ages to volcanic eruptions to massive storms. Humans evolved not by finding safe places to hide, but by constantly adapting to new dangers. Their brains are literally designed to be uncomfortable with too much safety. Dexvol's skin patterns showed skepticism. That cannot be correct. All intelligent species eventually seek security and stability. Not humans, Zephyr replied. I have been working with one of their researchers, Dr. Gary Phillips, to understand this. Humans have a psychological need for what they call growth and challenge. Remove those needs, and they become depressed and restless. Meanwhile, on Earth, Gary Phillips was having the same conversation with human leaders. He stood in the White House briefing room, explaining his joint research with the alien scientist Zephyr. What we've discovered is that humans are psychologically incapable of accepting permanent safety, Gary told President Helen Baker and her advisors. Every human society in history has eventually pushed beyond its safe boundaries to explore new territories, try new ideas, or face new challenges. President Baker frowned. But surely the aliens' protection would allow us to do those things safely. No, ma'am, Gary replied. Their protection specifically prevents expansion, exploration, and risk-taking.
Oh.
Those activities are exactly what they consider dangerous, but they're also exactly what makes us human. Secretary of Defense Robert Kim leaned forward. Dr. Phillips, are you saying that accepting alien protection would fundamentally change who we are as a species? Based on the evidence Dr. Santos found in their database? Yes. Within 3 generations, humanity would become something completely different, peaceful, content, and creatively dead. The president stood and walked to the window, looking out at the alien ships that still hung motionless over Washington, D.C. What happens if we refuse their protection? They've made it clear that species who refuse protection typically don't survive, Gary answered. But they've also never encountered a species like us before. That afternoon, President Baker addressed both the United Nations and the Zephyrian Council in a historic broadcast that reached every corner of Earth and every alien ship in the fleet. To our friends from the stars, she began, we are grateful that you traveled so far to offer us your protection. We understand that you have successfully protected hundreds of civilizations over thousands of years. She paused, looking directly into the camera that she knew was transmitting to the alien ships. However, after careful consideration, the people of Earth must respectfully decline your offer. The reaction was immediate. On alien ships throughout the solar system, emergency lights began flashing. Council meetings were called on dozens of worlds. For the first time in Zephyrian history, species had formally refused the preservation protocol. President Baker continued her speech. We choose to face whatever dangers exist in the galaxy on our own terms. We choose the right to fail over the guarantee of safety. We choose uncertainty over protection. Within hours, the Exaloom was back on Earth, but this time, he was not alone. A massive fleet of Zephyrian warships took positions around the solar system. Their message to Earth was simple and direct. Humanity has made a dangerous choice. The Exaloom announced, if you will not accept protection, you must be prevented from spreading your dangerous ideas to other species. The alien commander appeared on every screen on Earth. Effective immediately, Earth will be contained within your solar system. You will not be allowed to travel beyond this boundary. Any attempt to contact other civilizations will be stopped. Donnie Jackson, Admiral of Earth's small space fleet, watched helplessly as alien ships began constructing some kind of barrier at the edge of the solar system. Whatever they were building would trap humanity on their homeworld and cut them off from the rest of the galaxy, but the aliens had made a critical mistake. They assumed that containing humanity would solve their problem. They did not understand that human ideas could not be contained as easily as human bodies. Amanda Price worked day and night in her laboratory, leading a team of the world's best scientists in developing new technologies. If humans were going to be trapped in their solar system, they would use that time to become stronger and smarter. Carlos Rodriguez and his engineers designed new types of spacecraft based on principles the aliens had not considered. Human technology had always been chaotic and unpredictable compared to alien systems. They would use that difference as an advantage. But the most important breakthrough came from 16-year-old Lisa Chang. While adult scientists worked on complex solutions, Lisa asked a simple question during a high school science presentation that was being broadcast online. If the aliens use organized, predictable technology to build their barriers, she said, what would happen if we used completely random, chaotic methods to get through them? The question reached Amanda Price within hours. Within days, human scientists were developing what they called chaos drive technology, based on mathematical principles that the highly ordered Zephyrian minds could not predict or counter. At the same time, Janae Foster was leading secret missions to establish contact with other species, using small ships disguised as space debris. Human agents began slipping through gaps in the alien containment system. Their message to other civilizations was simple but revolutionary. You have the right to choose your own path. The effect was immediate and terrifying to the Zephyrian leadership. Protected species throughout the galaxy began asking questions they had never asked before. Why were they not allowed to explore beyond their systems? Why had their technology stopped advancing? Why did they need protection from dangers they had never seen? Marcus Webb, Earth's liaison to the growing resistance movement, received reports from across the galaxy that filled him with hope and worry. 3 protected worlds had formally demanded an end to their protection status. 2 had begun building their own spacecraft. 1 had refused to accept New Zephyrian infrastructure improvements. The most shocking report came from the world of Kepler 44b. The species there, inspired by human broadcasts, had successfully launched their first independent space mission. In over 2,000 years, the pilot, a being called Valthera, transmitted a message that was received throughout the galaxy. My people choose uncertainty over guaranteed safety. We choose to risk failure in order to have the chance for real success. Within days, 17 more protected worlds announced similar intentions. The careful order that the Zephyrians had maintained for thousands of years was beginning to crack. In the crystal chambers of the Zephyrian flagship, the Exaloom faced the worst crisis in his species' history. Zephyrus warnings had proven correct. The humans were not dangerous because of their weapons or their technology. The energy barrier at the edge of the solar system glowed like a wall of blue fire that stretched for millions of miles. Tony Jackson stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship vessel, the Independence, watching the alien construction through his ship's instruments. The barrier was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Admiral, his communications officer, called out, "We're receiving another transmission from the Zephyrian monitoring station on the moon." Tony nodded grimly. The aliens had built observation posts on the moon and Mars, their advanced technology, creating structures that made human bases look like simple huts. Every move Earth's ships made was being watched and recorded. "Let me hear it," Tony said. The alien voice filled the bridge. "Earth Vessel Independence, you are approaching the containment boundary. Return to your previous position immediately." Tony picked up the microphone. "This is Admiral Jackson of the Earth Defense Fleet. We're conducting routine patrol of our own solar system." "Your patrol activities are noted," the alien replied. "Do not attempt to cross the barrier. Any ship that touches the containment field will be destroyed." Tony switched off the microphone and turned to his officers. The faces around him showed the same frustration he felt. Earth had become a prison with walls they could see but could not cross. But down on Earth, something remarkable was happening. Instead of giving up, humanity was becoming more creative and determined than ever before. Amanda Price had moved her entire research team to a secret facility in the mountains of Colorado. Laboratory buzzed with activity 24 hours a day. "Show me the latest test results," Amanda said to her assistant, Dr. Kevin Chang. Kevin pulled up a holographic display showing mathematical equations that seemed to dance and change on their own. "The chaos drive theory is working better than we hoped. Every time we run the simulation, it produces completely different results." Amanda smiled for the first time in weeks. "That's exactly what we want. If we can't predict what our own technology will do, the aliens certainly can't either." The breakthrough had come from studying how human creativity worked compared to alien thinking. Zephyrian technology was perfect, efficient, and completely predictable. Human technology was messy, often broke down, and frequently did unexpected things. For the first time in history, those weaknesses might become strengths. Carlos Rodriguez was working on the same problem from a different angle. In his workshop in Houston, he was building spacecraft that looked like they had been designed by someone who had never seen a proper spaceship before. The ships were covered with random antennas, asymmetrical engine pods, and equipment that seemed to serve no obvious purpose. "Carlos, this thing looks insane," said his chief engineer, Lisa Park. "That's the point," Carlos replied, welding another oddly shaped piece to the ship's hull. "The aliens think in straight lines and perfect circles. Ships think in spirals and zigzags." Meanwhile, Janet Foster was preparing for the most dangerous mission in human history. She stood in a hangar beneath the Nevada desert, looking at a spacecraft that was barely 20 feet long and looked more like a pile of space junk than a vehicle capable of interstellar travel. "Are you sure this thing will work?" asked her co-pilot, Captain Steve Wilson. "No," Janet replied honestly. "But that's what makes it perfect." The plan was simple and completely crazy. Janet and Steve would use their Chaos Drive ship to slip through the alien barrier during a solar storm. An electromagnetic interference would make it harder for the Zephyrians to track them. If they succeeded, they would carry human messages to every alien civilization they could reach. The solar storm arrived 3 days later. As charged particles from the sun crashed into the barrier, creating spectacular light shows across the solar system, Janet's tiny ship launched from a hidden base on the far side of the moon. The Zephyrian monitoring stations detected the launch immediately, but something strange happened. Their instruments could not get a clear reading on the human ship. The Chaos Drive was working exactly as Amanda Price had predicted, creating patterns too random for alien computers to track accurately. Janet held her breath as their ship approached the barrier. According to their calculations, they had a 17% chance of getting through without being destroyed. In the alien way of thinking, those odds were so bad that no rational being would attempt the mission. But humans had never been entirely rational. The ship hit the barrier, and for a moment, everything went white. Then they were through, flying free in interstellar space for the first time in human history. "Steve, send the signal," Janet ordered. Their transmission was simple but powerful. This is Captain Janet Foster of Earth, to any civilization receiving. This message: you have the right to choose your own destiny. Freedom is possible. The message spread across the galaxy faster than the Zephyrians could stop it. Within hours, it was being received on hundreds of protected worlds on the planet Velthara Prime, a species that had been protected for 3,000 years heard the human message during their evening rest period. Council leader Morden called an emergency meeting of his people's governing body. Fellow citizens, Morden announced, we have received a transmission that raises important questions about our relationship with our protectors. The Veltharan people had not held a real political debate in over 2 millennia. Their Zephyrian protectors had always made the important decisions for them. But something about the human message awakened thoughts they had not had in generations. Why do we not build our own ships? Asked a young Veltharan named Kethra. Why do we not explore other worlds? Asked another. Why do we accept everything? Our protectors tell us without asking questions. Within days, similar conversations were happening on dozens of protected worlds. The Zephyrian Council watched in horror as civilizations that had been peaceful and obedient for thousands of years began demanding answers. Back in Earth's solar system, the alien response was swift and decisive. More ships arrived, and the monitoring became even more strict. But the damage was already done. Humanity had proven that the Zephyrian containment could be broken. Marcus Webb received reports from around the galaxy that filled him with both hope and fear. The protected worlds were changing, but change was dangerous. Some species were handling their new independence well, but others were struggling. The world of Zordon Beta had attempted to build their first spacecraft in 6,000 years. The project failed catastrophically, killing dozens of their people. The Zephyrian protectors used this disaster as proof that independence was dangerous and foolish. But other worlds were succeeding beyond anyone's expectations. The Kethver Collective had not only built new ships, but had also begun developing technologies their protectors had never seen before. They were doing things the Zephyrians had thought impossible. The most significant change came from the world of Nexus 7. The species there, inspired by human broadcasts, did something unprecedented. They politely but firmly asked their Zephyrian protectors to leave. We are grateful for everything you have done for us, their leader Talana announced. But we wish to try managing our own affairs now. The Zephyrian protectors were stunned. In their entire history, no protected species had ever asked them to leave. They had no protocols for such a situation, Talana continued. If we fail, that will be our choice and our responsibility. If we succeed, that will be our achievement and our victory. Within a week, Nexus 7 had declared complete independence. From Zephyrian protection, they began dismantling the alien monitoring stations and defensive installations on their world. The effect rippled across the galaxy. If Nexus 7 could declare independence, other worlds could do the same. Within a month, 12 more protected civilizations had made similar announcements. Commander Vexvalum faced the Council in an emergency session. The situation was spiraling beyond their control. Protected species everywhere were questioning the fundamental assumptions that had kept galactic civilizations stable for millennia. The humans have created chaos throughout our protected territories, Vexvalum reported. 17 worlds have declared independence. 43 more are demanding reviews of their protection agreements. 6 civilizations have stopped accepting our technological assistance. Councilmember Ziffer spoke quietly from her position in the crystal chamber. Commander, perhaps we need to consider that the humans might be correct about something we have overlooked. Correct about what? Vexvalum demanded that choosing one's own path, even if it leads to failure, might be more important than guaranteed safety. The chamber fell silent. The idea was so foreign to Zephyrian thinking that most of the council members could not even process it properly. But they could not ignore the evidence. Protected civilizations were changing. Some were struggling, but others were achieving things that Zephyrian science had thought impossible. The galaxy was becoming unpredictable, chaotic, and dangerous. It was also becoming more alive than it had been in thousands of years. On Earth, President Baker received a priority transmission from the Zephyrian flagship. Commander Thexval's message was simple but unprecedented. President Baker, the Zephyrian Collective, requests permission to begin new negotiations with Earth. We wish to discuss alternative arrangements. The moment that changed galactic history happened on a Tuesday morning when a small ship launched from the surface, Kepler 4b. The pilot was a being named Velthara, and she was doing something that had not been done on her world for over 2,000 years. She was exploring space without permission from her protectors. Velthara's ship was primitive by Zephyrian standards. Built with technology her people had developed in secret over the past 6 months. As she flew past the Zephyrian monitoring stations, she broadcast a message that was heard across the galaxy. My name is Velthara of the 442b system. I choose to explore the unknown rather than accept the known. I choose uncertainty over safety. I choose freedom. Within hours, her message had been received on 600 protected worlds. Within days, 17 more independent ships had launched. From different planets, the age of Zephyrian control was ending, and no one knew what would replace it. Commander Vexvalum stood in the main chamber of his flagship, watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. His skin patterns showed colors that other Zephyrians had never seen before, combinations of confusion, fear, and something that might have been wonder. The situation is beyond our control, he announced to the full council. Protected species throughout the galaxy are declaring independence. Some are succeeding, others are failing, but all are choosing. Council member Ziffer activated a holographic display showing the current state of their protected territories. Red dots marked worlds in rebellion. Yellow dots showed worlds demanding renegotiation of their protection agreements. And green dots indicated worlds that still accepted traditional protection. The green dots were becoming fewer each day. We face a fundamental choice, Ziffer said. We can attempt to force these species back into protection through military action, or we can adapt our entire civilization to this new reality. The debate that followed lasted for 3 days and involved every member of the Zephyrian Collective. For a species that had not faced a major philosophical challenge in over 5,000 years, the discussion was painful and difficult. Meanwhile, Earth had become the unofficial capital of what the galaxy was calling the Independence Movement. Ships from dozens of worlds were arriving in the solar system, seeking advice and support from the species that had started the revolution. Sandra Kelly, Earth's new ambassador to the galaxy, stood in a hastily constructed space station above Earth, meeting with representatives from civilizations that humans had never imagined could exist. The station buzzed with dozens of different languages as species shared their experiences with independence. The most difficult part, explained Ambassador Retton from the Vortex Nebula, is learning to make decisions for ourselves again. My people have not had to choose their own path for 4,000 years. Nicole Barnes, captain of Earth's first diplomatic vessel, nodded sympathetically. It's like learning to walk again after being carried for your entire life. Not all the news was good. The world of Sigma Draconis had attempted independence, but had quickly fallen into civil war. When their people could not agree on how to govern themselves, the Centauri Collective had begun independence well, but was now struggling with an economic crisis as they tried to manage their own resources. But for every failure, there were 2 successes. The Andromeda Trade Union had not only achieved independence, but had also developed new technologies that surpassed anything the Zephyrians had given them. The Crystal Worlds had formed their own defensive alliance and were successfully protecting themselves from threats their former protectors had hidden from them. Kevin Wright, Earth's representative to the independence movements, compiled reports. From across the galaxy, the pattern was clear but complex. Independence was dangerous, often leading to conflicts and disasters that protection had prevented. But independence was also creative, leading to innovations and achievements that protection had made impossible. Freedom has a price, Kevin reported. To Earth's leadership, some species are paying that price in blood and failure, but others are achieving things that were unimaginable under protection. The crisis reached its peak when the Zephyrian Council made an unprecedented decision. For the first time in their recorded history, they split into 2 factions. The traditionalists, led by the HFY, wanted to use military force to restore order. The Reformers, led by Ziffer, wanted to completely restructure their relationship. With other species, the Reformers won by a single vote. Ziffer's ship arrived at Earth 3 weeks later, carrying a proposal that no human had expected to hear. She requested a meeting with Earth's leadership to discuss what she called a new paradigm for galactic civilization. The meeting took place on the space station above Earth, with representatives from 30 independent worlds attending. Stood before the assembly, her crystal skin showing patterns of humility that were rarely seen among her species. For 10,000 years, the Zephyrian Collective has believed that our role was to protect younger species from the dangers of the galaxy, she began. We believed that safety was more important than choice, that survival was more important than growth. She paused, looking around the room at the representatives of species that had chosen freedom over protection. You have taught us that we were wrong. The admission sent shockwaves through the assembly.
Ow.
An ancient galactic power was publicly acknowledging that their fundamental philosophy had been flawed. Zephyr continued. We propose a new relationship between the collective and the species of the galaxy. Instead of protectors who make decisions for others, we will become advisors who offer assistance to those who choose to accept it. Sandra Kelly leaned forward. What exactly does that mean? It means choice, Zephyr replied. Species that wish to remain under traditional protection can do so, but they must actively choose that protection every generation. Species that wish independence will be allowed to pursue it without interference. And species that wish something in between can negotiate their own arrangements. The proposal was revolutionary. Instead of a galaxy divided between protectors and protected, there would be a community of species making their own choices about how much risk and how much help they wanted. But Nicole Barnes raised the obvious question. What happens when independent species make mistakes? What happens when they go to war or destroy themselves? Zephyrs' skin patterns showed sadness. Then they fail. We will mourn their loss. We will also celebrate their right to choose their own destiny. The negotiations took 6 months. The final agreement, known as the Galactic Choice Accord, established principles that had never existed in the galaxy before. Every species had the right to determine its own level of independence. Every species had the right to change its mind. And every species had the right to fail. The Zephyrian Collective officially dissolved their preservation protocol and reformed as the Galactic Advisory Council. Instead of imposing protection, they offered it to those who wanted it, instead of making decisions for other species. They provided information to help species make their own decisions. Not all Zephyrians accepted the change. Commander Thexvalum and about 30% of the collective chose to leave the galaxy entirely, seeking a new home where they could continue their traditional protection mission. They departed peacefully, taking with them any protected species that chose to accompany them. 5 years after the first human asked, "Why do you assume we want your protection?" The galaxy had been transformed. Earth had become the center of the Independent Worlds Alliance, a loose confederation of over 200 species that had chosen freedom over security. Some of those species had thrived beyond anyone's expectations. Others had struggled with wars, disasters, and problems that protection would have prevented. A few had failed completely and become extinct, but they had all made their own choices. Kevin Wright, now Earth's permanent ambassador to the galaxy, stood on the observation deck of Independence Station, watching ships from dozens of worlds coming and going. Human vessels worked alongside alien craft, some sleek and advanced, others crude and experimental. The galaxy was more dangerous now than it had been under Zephyrian protection. Wars were fought, mistakes were made, and civilizations sometimes fell. But it was also more alive, more creative, and more hopeful than it had been in thousands of years. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral of the Independent Worlds Defense Force, reflected on how much had changed since that first day when silver ships had appeared over Earth. Humanity had not defeated the Zephyrians through superior technology or military might. They had won by asking a question that no one else had thought. To ask why. Such a simple word, but it had changed everything. Why do you assume we want protection? Why do you make decisions for us? Why should safety be more important than choice? The galaxy was learning that questions could be more powerful than weapons, that ideas could be more dangerous than armies, and that the simple human concept of choice could transform an entire civilization. Earth's children were now spreading across the stars, carrying with them the most dangerous gift humanity had ever discovered. Not technology, not weapons, but the idea that every thinking being had the right to choose their own path, even if that path led to failure.